joined with Logan Lowery. We are from the Northeast Mississippi Daily Journal. We are the beat guys, Logan with Mississippi State, and I cover Ole Miss. And we want to just talk to you a little bit about the news of the week, about last week's games, and about this week's games as well. Logan, what's going on, man?
Not much, Parrish. I guess I'm coming to you live from the Starkville Bureau of the Daily Journal.
Well, I dig the furniture in the Starkville Bureau, man. That sofa looks really comfortable. And folks, you're seeing here the background of the Daily Journal West Tupelo branch here. So Logan and I coming live to you. Logan, go ahead and put it out on Twitter, man, that we're here, and then we can take some questions that way. But folks, wanted to talk to you mostly about about last week and this week, and we're going to start this out with news of the week. I'm going to swing it to Logan. Logan, you got some possible news.
Well, Dak Prescott, there's been rumors going around Starkville that maybe Dak Prescott has re-aggravated that foot injury that he had a couple of years ago. He missed most of spring, and I don't really know how much to make into it. I've heard it from more than one person, but can't get anybody to confirm it. So right now it's still a rumor. I guess we'll know more. I guess on Saturday. Dan Mullen doesn't like to talk about injuries anyway, but the telling thing for me was the fact that Dak Prescott does a media availability the first day of every week, which would have been Tuesday for this week because they took Monday off for their holiday. And Dak Prescott did not show up for that. We were told he was in a meeting and he would be available on Wednesday. Well, Wednesday came around and no Dak Prescott, and we didn't get a reason why there was no Dak Prescott. So, that kind of gives a little bit more validity to the rumor, but as of right now, it's still a rumor.
Hey, well, let's look at it this way, Logan. Tell us a little bit about Dak in the game against Southern Miss. Was there anything in the game that indicated that he might have been hurt? Did he leave early? Did he walk off slowly? I mean, a lot of times you see that. Was there anything you saw that kind of sent up some warning flags?
Not at all. Dak Prescott didn't run a whole lot during that ball game, but I think that was more by design of the game plan. I don't think that they intended to run Dak a whole lot against Southern Miss. I think they were, trying to preserve those blows on his body for later on in the season when they need him to run the football. And from what I heard, it may have been an injury that happened at practice. They did practice, I think, on Sunday. It was either Sunday or Monday that they practiced. I'm not sure. We're not allowed to go to practice anyway, so I really don't know exactly what their practice schedule is some of the time. But he did practice earlier in the week, and by the time we got back to campus on Tuesday and on into Wednesday is when we started to hear those rumors start to pop up. But right now they are rumors, and I can't really report any fact to those until I see them on Saturday. I was searching for him in the SEAL building yesterday, but did not see any sign of Dak Prescott at all.
Well, how did they handle Dak during the game? I mean, obviously it got out of hand quickly. I mean, what were his reps and playing time like as that score continued to grow?
Well, he played, I guess, probably about a quarter and a half of that game, maybe even 2 quarters. I know they did pull him out the third series of the game, and that was by design. They wanted to it wasn't just Dak Prescott that they put in that third series. It was the entire second string offense. They put him in. They quickly went 3 and out on that drive, and everybody was like, what is Dan Mullen doing? Is he trying to get back at the first team offense for not scoring on the goal line on that second drive? But it was by design. That was the plan going into the game to put the whole second string in there. And by the time the score started to get out of hand, that's when they got Dak out of the game. Damian Williams took the rest of the reps the rest of the way, and we may see a lot of Damian Williams this week.
Now, I remember Damian Williams from the Egg Bowl. Is he the clear number 2 now?
Absolutely. The guys that are behind him are 2 true freshmen, and I don't know if those guys will redshirt this year. You would think with them bringing in 2 more quarterbacks in this next class that they would go ahead and burn a red shirt on one of the guys that they've got for this year. Just it would be way too many quarterbacks to kind of handle. At that point, if they redshirt both Elijah Staley and Nick Fitzgerald. But Damian Williams got a little bit of playing time as a true freshman last year. He got into 6 games for Mississippi State, started the Egg Bowl. But he really didn't look comfortable against Southern Miss last week. He fumbled a snap, which led to Southern Miss's only scoring opportunity of the game. He just didn't look comfortable. And Damian Williams was a former Southern Miss commitment at one point, so I don't know if he was just trying too hard or really what the issue was. Maybe it's just nerves or first game jitters or whatever. But they'll need for him to settle down, especially if he has to be the starter for a few weeks.
Well, news of the week from Ole Miss was a position change. Derek Jones at cornerback going back to wide receiver. Actually, I don't know if he ever played wide receiver, has played wide receiver at Ole Miss as a sophomore. He was a member of that heralded 2013 recruiting class, and actually Hugh Freeze called him the sleeper of that class. He's 6'2", he's very athletic, played wide receiver at Eupora, started out at safety at Ole Miss, moved to cornerback, and when they made the move, they were talking about Derek Jones as a guy with an NFL future at cornerback. Dave Womack, the defensive coordinator, making the comment that Derek Jones will make a lot of money one day. I mean, they really liked Derek Jones's frame at 6'2" as a guy who could match up well with bigger receivers. And Logan, everybody's going to bigger receivers now when they can get them. You see them a lot in the SEC, and he would give them a good matchup in that situation, but he didn't pan out. And frankly, when we began to see Cliff Coleman, a kind of a journeyman who's been on the team a long time and hasn't really stuck in a big role, when we began to see him playing ahead of Derek Jones, this move is not surprising, particularly with the depth at wide receiver, and that got a little better last week with Cody Core, but it's still a position that Hugh Freeze had challenged during camp and had talked to his guys about elevating their play and just really calling on someone to jump up and play a larger role among those wide receivers. The move of Derek Jones there is not really surprising. I mean, he's an athlete that I know they want to get on the field some way. I guess the question about this move at this time is how far behind is Derek Jones in learning the position? How quickly can he do that? Can his athleticism help him get on the field early and make an impact?
Recruiting, back when I worked for Rivals.com, I saw Derek a few times, and obviously he's right down the road in Eupora from Starkville. Mississippi State took a long look at him, and they liked his athleticism. They thought he was a ball player, but really just kind of what Ole Miss is going through right now. Mississippi State really didn't know exactly what to do with him, where he kind of fit. They liked what he brought to the table, but just didn't really know which position he would fit best at. And that's it looks like kind of what the situation is now. They got a heck of an athlete, and they've got to figure out exactly where to put him. And like I said, I think he's athletic enough to play wide receiver, but now he's got to delve into that playbook and pick that up. And how quickly he does that will probably affect his playing time.
Well, the other news to come out of Ole Miss this week, it looks like Isaac Gross, junior nose tackle, will play in the game. He missed most of camp with a neck sprain, did not play against Boise. Looks like he is available. Collins Moore, senior wide receiver, is not. He has been out with a knee injury, and again, that's impacted depth at the position. Looks like he will not be available for the Vanderbilt game Saturday. That's a 3:30 start for Ole Miss. Game will be televised on ESPN, and the SEC Network pregame show will originate from Nashville, right at the foot of that pedestrian bridge that crosses from downtown over the Cumberland River over to the grounds of LP Field. So there's that to look forward to if you're fans. You want to get there early. They're going to be broadcasting that show from 9 to 11. A little more news, Logan. Denzel Kimdichie is going to play this week. So basically the two suspended linebackers, Sherdarius Bryant, went through spring drills, although he was suspended. The suspension for Denzel Kimdichie was a little more severe. We knew that Denzel was going to miss the opener against Boise State in Atlanta, near his hometown. But the way things turned out, Sherdarius Bryant didn't play much in the game because he was called for targeting about a little past the midway point of the first quarter. So he was gone for the rest of the game. Both of those guys will be available and should help an Ole Miss defense that really looked pretty strong in the opener. So that was the other news to come out of Ole Miss this week. Shifting gears a little bit, I want to look at last week and look ahead to this week's opponent. Starting with State, Logan. I guess the question that I have after the game is not how good is State. Now, I believe they have some talent. I believe they have a good football team. I think the bigger question is how bad is Southern Miss again?
I agree, Kyle. I'm kind of in the same boat, Parrish. I think State's got a pretty good ball club, but you really didn't know how much to make into how they won 49-0 over Southern Miss last week. It was the first shutout since 1999, so just getting a shutout on the board was huge for Mississippi State. I think their defense is really, really well, and it probably won't be their last shutout this year. But Southern Miss didn't exactly set the woods on fire offensively in that game, and they got after the quarterback. They applied pressure the entire game. Only gave up 71 yards on the ground, but Mississippi State debuted their no-huddle, hurry-up offense. That was something that I had a question about during camp. Some of the players kind of let the cat out of the bag, and even though Dan Mullen denied it, I was kind of expecting them to run that this year. And
are you saying that sometimes what the coaches say and what actually occurs that those are different things? Is that what you're saying, Logan? Were you led astray?
Shocking, huh? Very shocking. But Dan Mullen went up to Oregon several years ago and kind of studied that Chip Kelly playbook thing, and was kind of looking into when that kind of debuted with Oregon up there. He really took a notice in that, and I thought I'd see it eventually, and it kind of fits Dak Prescott style. It didn't really fit Tyler Russell. He was more of a pocket passer, pro style quarterback, but now they got Dak Prescott. He ran that style of offense in high school. He feels comfortable in it, and they kind of have some depth at wide receiver and some experience at wide receiver. So they actually have an offense that can run it this year. And, so I wasn't really shocked to see that.
Well, I'll tell you what, we spent the offseason around the Ole Miss beat hearing about the experience of Bo Wallace, and he is the most experienced quarterback in the SEC, and it was a little, I guess not what you would expect from that experienced quarterback to throw 3 interceptions in the first half. And if Bo Wallace did not have the history with interceptions and turnovers that he has, maybe you write that off and say it's one of those games. But there's a body of work with Bo Wallace that is going to disturb a lot of fans, and the turnover problem is one that he's going to have to get corrected. He's the guy. Right after the game, in the post-game press conference, there's not going to be a quarterback controversy at Ole Miss. I think there is some talent behind Bo Wallace, but it's not ready. It's not ready to step in against an SEC schedule right now. Free said very quickly, he's our guy. That was his quote. So it's going to be, how far Ole Miss goes this season if the Rebels can meet the high expectations for the season. It's going to depend on what Bo Wallace can do, how far he can take them. And as he also showed against Boise State, he can be very, very good. And there is a lot of talent around him. We saw Laquan Treadwell basically take over the game when it was 7-6 with a couple of catches, 3 catches on the drive that put the Rebels ahead 14-6, culminated with his own 14-yard touchdown catch. The big play on that drive, though, Logan, was one of those free plays. Boise jumps off sides, but you've got a quarterback and a receiver who are alert and who are looking for the big play, and they just throw it downfield, and Treadwell makes a catch in one-on-one coverage. That was a 29-yard gain. It kind of got them going on that drive. So, this team is going to rely on Bo Wallace in the second half. After the 3 interceptions, he was 12 for 14 for 239 yards and 3 touchdowns. Those are pretty good numbers. You can't take away the interceptions, though, because those interceptions change games. It only takes one to change a game against an SEC opponent. And so they've spent this week, I'm sure, looking at decisions and staying within the progressions for Bo Wallace. That was the most disturbing thing, Logan, that came out of that press conference was of those 3 interceptions, on 2 of them, he just disbanded his natural progression of reads. He just started mavericking, so to speak, and got away from those, and those resulted in interceptions. And you can't have that. I mean, your senior quarterback, your experienced guy, has to trust the system and play within the system. I think we'll see more of that this week against Vanderbilt.
Yeah, Mississippi State, Dak Prescott, you kind of saw him in the game there, kind of working on his passing. We heard all off season how much improved his passing was. He got good reviews from the Manning Passing Academy, and you saw him in the pocket stay there. You didn't see Dak. I think Dan Mullen said there were 2 designed quarterback runs during that ball game, and obviously if you've watched Mississippi State, got design runs in that offense, but I didn't see a whole lot of that in the opener. He stayed in the pocket for the most part, and he looked good throwing the ball, except for one pass, and he was picked off in the end zone. He just stared down Fred Brown in the end zone and threw it right to the defender. It was just a bad play all the way around for Dak Prescott, and he was the first guy to tell us that after the ball game. He took full responsibility for that. Another thing Mississippi State's going to have to get cleaned up is their red zone scoring, and that was something plagued them last year. They were bad in the red zone last year. We talked last week about how bad their field goal kicking was. They were the second to worst field goal kicking team in the country last year, just ahead of UTEP. And they missed a 40-yard field goal the other night. They alternated 2 walk-on kickers kicking extra points. They made all their extra points, but they've got to get a kicker settled, and they were 1 of 4 in the red zone last week against Southern Miss, and that's just not good. They got the ball at the 4-yard line on the second drive, and couldn't punch it in against Southern Miss, and had 4 plays to do that and couldn't get the job done. So that was disappointing to see. Dan Mullen was disappointed in that, and we'll see if they get that cleaned up this week.
Well, Logan, are we just the negative media that a team scores almost 50 points, throws a shutout, and we can find things to complain about?
Probably so. I mean, that's kind of what the fan base is thinking anyway. And I guess that's supposedly our job is to just be negative all the time. I'm sure you get the same thing from the Ole Miss fans about being negative all the time. I know I do from the State fans.
Well, here's my thought on that. I think the administration, the team, the fans, everyone wants the best football team that they can have. In order to achieve that, you have to be open and honest about deficiencies and trying to identify those and to go back to work and correct those. So if it sounds like we're picking on people, hey, that's Ole Miss won 35-13, beat a good football team, but they know there are some things that they need to work on this week. It was really kind of odd, Logan, because we got to the press conference on Monday with Hugh Freeze, and there were questions about the inability to run the ball. There were questions about Wallace and decision-making and interceptions, and there were, how these press conferences are, man. I guess it's the same at State. You got to wait for the microphone. So when you finally get the microphone, usually you have one question, and if you have a follow-up, well, the microphone may be gone to another part of the room now. It's not like the old days when you just gather around and fire off a lot of questions. So it really, with the slow pace of questioning, it gave the appearance that there was just a really negative tone on things, and after about 3 questions, Freeze kind of breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Ooh, I get to talk about some other things now." I mean, I'm paraphrasing there, but there was a lot of good in that game for Ole Miss, starting with the defense. Now they missed some tackles, they took some poor angles. A couple of those things resulted in some big plays for Boise. A couple of times Boise had a good play called against the Ole Miss scheme for that play, but by and large that was a dominant front line for Ole Miss, which we thought it had the potential to be, particularly against a Boise offensive line that is in a bit of transition. But they really played well up there, led by Robert Kimdichie. They had 3 sacks in the game. Kimdichie was just back there in the backfield, it seemed like, almost every play. I'm sure that Grant Hedrick, the Boise quarterback, could tell you whether or not Robert Kimdichie remembered to put on deodorant that day, because they were close together a lot. So a strong performance by the defense. They're going to have some issues with cornerback depth. They're really missing T. Shepard right now, and we're going to have to see how that plays out when Mike Hilton and Sinquez Golson are there, and that'll be more times than not. They're going to be pretty good at corner, and of course the the safeties. Just lots of hard hits passed around, Logan, from the Ole Miss secondary in that game. Cody Pruitt, Trey Elston, Tony Connor at Husky, just big hits. If you could get, if they would allow you to put a point on the scoreboard for a big hit, Ole Miss would have had like another 10 points in the game. So anyway, some good to come out of that game as well.
Well, I guess since you're being positive, I'll be positive too, Parrish. I like Mississippi State's defense as well. They, I don't think Southern Miss even got on Mississippi State's side of the field, but maybe 2 or 3 times during that ball game. And one of those was due to a fumbled snap by Damian Williams, the backup quarterback. And yeah, they had a couple interceptions in that game. One of them was on the 3rd play of the ball game. The other one was by Jay Hughes in the end zone. Those 2 guys, Preston Smith and Jay Hughes, came up big later in that game. You know, when Damian Williams fumbled the snap on that side of the field, it set up a field goal for Southern Miss, and their only scoring opportunity really in the game. And Preston Smith blocks the field goal. Jay Hughes scoops it up, returns it 68 yards for a touchdown, and that kind of put the final nail in the coffin as far as the route. And the route was already on at that point, but that just solidified everything for State. And Preston Smith got SEC Defensive Lineman of the Week. He lived in the backfield, kind of like you said Kim Deechey did. Preston Smith was back there all day. Actually did have a sack, but grabbed the quarterback's face mask. Grabbed Nick Mullen's face mask in the process of.
That's illegal. Can't do that.
Exactly. And I asked him about it yesterday. I said, "Did you know that you got the face mask?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "I tried to let it go as soon as I grabbed it and hoped the referee didn't see it, but it was right out there in the middle. It wasn't no denying that at all." And he knew immediately, as soon as he grabbed it, that he got the sack, but they were just going to take it right back away from him. So he's a guy that played really well in the Liberty Bowl for Mississippi State. He's a senior now, and really just wants to turn his game up this final season to hopefully improve his NFL draft stock.
All right, well, let's spin this forward a little bit. State is at home this week against UAB. Ole Miss on the road at Vanderbilt. Tell us a little bit about the State and UAB game. A lot of talk about State's schedule, Logan. A lot of people think it's not that strong, and for the second week, it looks like the Bulldogs will be heavily favored. Will they get more competition from UAB than they did from Southern Miss?
I think so, and a week ago, if you had asked me that question, Parrish, I would have probably said that UAB and Southern Miss are right on par, because Southern Miss blew out UAB to end the season last year. But there's a new coach in town, Bill Clark. He came up from Jacksonville State. They had a huge win over Troy last week. You know how good Troy was a year ago, Parrish. You covered them. I did as well. And they wasn't a bad football team. They had a little bit of talent there, and UAB just blew them out. Rushed for over 338. I think it was 338 yards. 4 touchdowns against Troy. Had 2 backs go over 100 yards. One of them nearly rushed for 200 yards. In fact, UAB's running backs coach, I graduated high school with. He was a teammate of mine in high school. I talked to him for an hour and a half on the phone last night. He's intimidated by Mississippi State's defense. I complimented how great his running backs played against Troy last week, and he was like, "Well, I just don't know if we'll have that type of game against State." He's like, "They're just so good."
Well, you ought to be breaking news out of UAB with that connection there, Logan.
It is, and his guy's name's Jody Wright. He actually was an assistant coach here at Mississippi State for several years. He worked from 2005 to 2008 under Sylvester Croom as a graduate assistant, and then he spent Dan Mullen's first season as kind of Dan Mullen's, I don't forget what his title was. Basically, he was Dan Mullen's right-hand man. He was kind of the gopher for Dan Mullen the entire time. And Jody left here, went to Alabama, spent a few years under Nick Saban, won a couple of national championships, got his first big break at Jacksonville State, his alma mater, with Bill Clark last year, and then he's the assistant head coach at UAB now at 33 years old. So I'm very proud of Jody, great friend of mine, known him for years, and it's going to be great to see him on Saturday.
All right, so it looks like UAB could be a little more competitive for State this week. I did note that Troy score, and I thought that's a little bit of a different UAB team. It's hard to think that they will put up too much of a fight against against State, which I think is pretty good. So we'll see, but I wouldn't think that that State would score. Was it 45? What did they get against Southern? 45, 49?
49.
49, almost 50 points. So I would think it would be a little closer than that. Ole Miss on the road at Vanderbilt, not a true road game. It's going to be at LP Field, home of the Tennessee Titans. The Rebels have had some good success in Nashville of late. You go back to the SEC basketball tournament in 2013, and then a football win there last year, kind of a big exciting win with Jeff Scott running 75 yards with just over a minute left. And frankly, Logan, you look at Vanderbilt and you see 13 returning starters from a team that won 9 games last year, 9 games the year before that, and even though they're debuting a new coach, you figure, well, they're going to have some experience, and they're going to be not terrible. But then they lost 37-7 to a Temple team, okay, that was 2-10 a year ago, and a lot of people are wondering if this isn't the Vanderbilt of prior to the James Franklin era there. I don't think you can get caught up in the fact that Vanderbilt turned the ball over 7 times. I don't think you go into a game as a defense and expect that you're going to get 7 turnovers. I don't think we're going to see that. I think the ball protection is going to be better for Vanderbilt, a much greater sense of awareness in the second game. I think there will be that. The question will be when they hold on to the ball, how much success will they have moving it against the Ole Miss defense? They don't even know who their starter is. I'm sure they know by now, but they're not telling anyone who the starter is. They played 3 quarterbacks in the game last week. One of them, Stephen Rivers, transfer from LSU, the brother of San Diego Chargers quarterback Phillip Rivers. He was 12 for 25 with an interception. Patton Robinette, a sophomore, wasn't much better, 4 for 6. Johnny McCrary, a redshirt freshman, also played in the game. Derek Mason's not going to announce a starter in advance of the game, so the Rebels will have that to affect their preparation this week at some level. But really, I think you can take McCrary out of that mix and just look at 2 quarterbacks. And the thing about Vanderbilt is they weren't that bad on defense. They held Temple to, I believe, 3.3 rushing yards. It was fewer than 4 yards per carry, and they're running a scheme of 3-4 that you just don't see that much. So you have an Ole Miss offensive line that did not play extremely well in the opener, had a lot of false starts in the first half until they cleaned that up and went to a silent count after halftime, and they were able to get rid of those pre-snap penalties then. But you have a line that struggled with this, with a line that also didn't run the ball well. The Rebels, just never really got in sync in the run game. Had a few runs late when Boise was a little bit leg weary. Kind of the reserve backs, Mark Dodson and Jordan Wilkins, did some good things. Maybe they get opportunities earlier in the game this week. We'll see. But you have that offensive line that's kind of been knocked down a little bit and has to get back up. All of a sudden, it's facing a new scheme. That could slow Ole Miss down a little bit. But the big thing that the Rebels were able to do while they couldn't run the ball, they were able to exploit Boise in the secondary. When Wallace was making good decisions, he was rarely pressured. He was able to find open receivers, and of course, we know what Laquan Treadwell can be, and he did take over the game there in the fourth quarter and kind of help Ole Miss get out in front and get on its way. But the other receivers, again, we talked a little bit about this earlier in the program with Derek Jones moving back to wide receiver, his natural high school position. The other receivers really played well for all of the challenges that they received from Hugh Freeze during camp. You had Cody Core step up, a starter at slot receiver now, 4 catches, 110 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Really caught the ball in space and made some Boise defenders miss, and then outran the secondary on a 76-yard play. Big night for Cody Core, a career game for him. I think it was also important that Quincy Adeboyejo, the sophomore, caught a 31-yard touchdown pass, was able to make a man miss and getting the end zone as well. I think that could really go a long way for his confidence. The athleticism is there, speed and skill are there for Quincy Adeboyejo. If he can take a step with his confidence and become the player that they believe he can be, then all of a sudden that receiving group becomes a pretty good core group there. So we'll see. I think Derek Jones can add to that. The question is going to be, as you mentioned earlier, Logan, how far along he is in the playbook and how quickly he can get caught up there. So Ole Miss at Vanderbilt, State at home against UAB. Quickly, Logan, before we get out of here, what surprised you for the first week in the SEC?
Well, I just think the progression of Texas A&M, I knew they were going to be good, but they lost so much from last year's team, and I thought it might take them a little while on into the second half of the season before we started to see that talent kind of emerge. But they went over to South Carolina and just really dominated that game from start to finish. And I don't think anybody was expecting that. But just the play of Kenny Hill at quarterback. There was a quarterback competition that whole camp. They brought in the #1 quarterback recruit in the country. Many thought he would come in and take over for Johnny Manziel right from the start, but Kenny Hill looked to be one of the best players, outside of Todd Gurley from last week. He was the most impressive player that I saw outside of Todd Gurley, so that was kind of what surprised me.
Yeah, I think Todd Gurley, the Georgia running back, becomes a Heisman frontrunner. But I've seen Kenny Hill's name mentioned in the Heisman race also. Look, here's the deal about Kenny Hill. I mean, as you mentioned, that was a pretty close competition in that A&M camp with the true freshman. I mean, so he didn't just explode through the A&M camp and make an easy decision for Kevin Sumlin. And I think what we saw in the first game with Texas A&M and South Carolina was that Kevin Sumlin's a pretty good coach. You take away Johnny Manziel, the most prolific player in the country maybe for the last 2 years, and they're still pretty good at quarterback. The other thing we saw was what an offensive line means. Now, I was getting ready for Ole Miss's game, Logan. I didn't see the whole Texas A&M South Carolina game. I saw bits and pieces in the first half. But when I saw Kenny Hill drop back, I didn't see that he was pressured. He was not under duress or anything.
Yeah, I agree, and I was just very impressed with his poise out there. Starting on the road, and that's kind of why he got that start, was the fact that he was the more experienced of the two, and they were playing on the road in a hostile environment in South Carolina. And you've been up there to South Carolina, you know how raucous that crowd could be, and with it being the opening game of the year, and they had that place rocking up there, and he stepped out there and silenced them on that very first drive. And kind of shocked a lot of those fans up there. But, if you remember back, Johnny Manziel didn't win his quarterback battle as a redshirt freshman. He barely emerged as a starter as the week one. There were question marks going into that one, and he ended up winning the Heisman that year. So we'll have to see if Kenny Hill can continue this streak and do the same thing that Johnny did a few years ago.
Hey, folks, that's it for this edition of Talking SEC Football. Thanks for being with us. We'll be back here next Thursday. Come join us.